All right, welcome to Hooked on Football. This is the Hooked on Football podcast. Today we're going to be looking at Week 6 college football. We have 7 different games we're going to be breaking down for you. Before we get into the podcast, I did want to go over one thing. I saw a tweet recently, and I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. Take a look at that, Brandon Marcello. Starting Wednesday, there will be 48 straight days of football on TV. College football or the NFL will provide us with at least one game every day until basically Thanksgiving. So definitely something to look forward to there. We're recording this on Wednesday. I know Wednesday today starts the kind of the MAC, the MAC action. There's a couple of different games tonight, but definitely something to look forward to now that we're gonna have football every day of the week. But anyway, thought that was a little fun tidbit to get into. But taking a look at our first game of the video, we got Maryland taking on number 4 Ohio State. This line is moving. When I made the notes for this video just a couple days ago, then I worked on it last night, but it was at 18.5. It's already jumped up to 20.5. So kind of the lay down here, Ohio State is coming off a bye week. Last 2 years, when coming off a bye week, Ohio State has beat them by 47.5 on average. So
their opponent in general?
Yes, their opponent in general.
Okay.
Past 2 years. Generally, it seems like well-coached teams, they're going to come off a bye week probably better than they were before. That's just usually how it works. 20.5, though, it seems like a large line. I don't know what you think about this, but 20.5 seems like a large line for a Maryland team that's 5-0, not even ranked, which seems a little unjust. I know maybe the quality of competition they played maybe hasn't been the highest. I know they played Virginia, they played Michigan State, some other teams that are escaping my mind, but I don't know. What do you think about this line at 20.5?
Yeah, I think it's pretty aggressive. Also, though, I do agree. Kind of BS that Maryland's not rated. I mean, yeah, schedule's not very impressive. Towson, Charlotte, Virginia, Michigan State, Indiana, but they pretty much killed everybody. And meanwhile, LSU's still ranked, but LSU has 2 losses. And again, I know one's to Florida State, the other's to Ole Miss, but it's just still kind of really? Why the heck is that? LSU's 3-2, and then they're still rated. So that's kind of bogus. But yeah, no, I think the line's pretty aggressive. I mean, if you kind of go through the history of these games, like last year, for instance, Maryland lost to Ohio State by 13 at home. Now, the year before that, they lost by 49 points in Columbus. So Maryland hasn't played very well against Ohio State historically. They're 0-8 all time. Granted, they only started playing them when they moved to the Big Ten.
And well, to add to that, and then I'll let you keep going. But I've seen a couple of things on Twitter. I don't know what it is, but people have been saying, actually been saying that said, well, Maryland always plays Ohio State to a tough game. I don't think that's really, when you look at historically.
No, well, here's the last 4 scores. They lost last year 43-30, year before that 66-17, year before that 73-14.
Jesus.
Yeah, they lost 52-51 in overtime in 2018, but the year before that they lost 62-14. So I don't know. Then the year before that they lost 62-3. So not really. They basically 1 year they played into a close game. I don't really remember the game last year, to be honest. They lost by 13. Maybe that was competitive down to the wire, but I will say Maryland's a lot better. I mean, I do think across the board they're a lot better this year than they've been in years past. Again, I know they don't have any particularly impressive wins. Virginia, Michigan State, Indiana, pretty weak. I mean, those are 3 pretty bad Power 5 teams. Now they beat all of them handedly.
Right.
But I just think Maryland is much improved. They've got, what is it, Tagovailoa? At quarterback, what is he, a third-year starter now? They've got a ton of great weapons at wide receiver. Their defense has really improved. Their defense, is giving up about as many yards as, for instance, Iowa's defense is, and Iowa's defense is seen as a top-notch defense. So I think Maryland across the board is a lot better.
Yeah.
A lot better than they've been. They seem to be moving in the right direction. It's an aggressive line, but I don't think I would bet it. Just because
Yeah.
I'd be nervous to bet at Ohio State at home, coming off a bye week.
Mhm.
For Ohio State, this is like, this is a good game for them to send another message. Although their last game was the Notre Dame game, wasn't it?
Right. And I think
Which makes you wonder if maybe they'd be a little sloppy. Potentially, you're just coming off. You were flying high going into that game.
yeah.
Maybe you have kind of a soft spot here. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that game though for sure put a lot of confidence into Kyle McCord, especially that last drive. I think that yeah, maybe they are coming into this game maybe feeling a little bit too, I don't want to say cocky, but maybe a little too confident. But no, I personally I think that this last game versus Notre Dame, they kind of unlocked their offense there, even though it really wasn't that high scoring of a game. They only put up 17 points, but Notre Dame's defense is really good, which we'll go over here later. But I did want to talk about Tagovailoa. He is coming off the best game of the year yet. He had 352 yards against Indiana. He had also with that game he had 5 touchdowns. And for what it's worth, Maryland put up 44 versus against Indiana versus Ohio State put up, I believe it was 23. Wasn't that the first game of the year? 23-3.
Yeah.
Indiana, Ohio State. So whatever it's worth there. Getting a little interruption there. But moving on though. For me though, I'm kind of all in on the Buckeyes at the Horseshoe. I think Maryland is a tier below Ohio State. But like what I was saying, after watching them at or play against Ohio State, they kind of showed or they sold me, to be honest. I just think Ohio State has too many toys on offense. They got one of the best running backs. They got some of the best receivers in the nation. And to me, honestly, this is a huge line, but to me, I'm taking this one. I like Ohio State to cover.
Yeah, I just wouldn't bet on it. I don't think I would touch it just because it'd make me a little nervous. Maryland's got a lot to play for. You would think this is a good spot for them to come in. They play with a chip on their shoulder, but at the same time, Maryland hasn't been very impressive. And when they've had something to prove, they haven't played very well historically in these types of games. So, yeah, I'd probably have to go Ohio State too. If I was forced to bet on it, I don't think I would go with Maryland. Not in this spot. Though I do think Maryland's good. Like I said, I think they're going to probably, if not Ohio State, I think there's a good chance they'll give someone an issue, whether it be Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State. I would bet on that this year. One of those 3 teams is going to struggle with Maryland.
For
I'm
sure.
just not sure. I'm just not sure it'll be Ohio State.
Our next game of the slate here, we got LSU at Missouri. Very interesting game here. Not really for LSU, but for Missouri particularly. Missouri, I just kind of my tidbit. Missouri's always kind of been an intriguing team for me. They haven't really been good for a while, but just anytime I see them playing on TV, I always think that they kind of have a stadium like no other. If you look at it here, I don't know what it is, but with the kind of with the surrounding, I don't know what you call it, wall, and then the end zones, the diamonds. I don't know what it is, but it's always been something about it's been intriguing to me. Missouri though, so Missouri LSU, the history of this, they ran into each other 3 times. That's it. One of the games too was in 1979, I want to say, and it was a bowl game. And then the other 2 times was 2016, and then it was, I believe, 2019. Mizzou won last time though in 2020. So for what that's worth, but going in here with Missouri, this is Missouri's best start in 10 years. Their offense is very dangerous. They have Brady Cook, who is making a case for dark horse Heisman run here. He threw for 400 yards against Vanderbilt in his last game. A win that personally I don't think that's getting quite enough credit. I've seen some people mention about it and just kind of fly past it. But I mean, they won 38-21 against Vanderbilt. And for the SEC, that's impressive win. It seems like there's a lot of close games in the SEC this year. No one's really blowing each other out. I mean, besides a couple, you had LSU versus Mississippi State that LSU just blew them out. But yeah, I really like their offense a lot. Brady Cook, he's thrown 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's gone 348 passes without an interception. In that time, Missouri's been 9-3 in that stretch. So he's playing great football. Also, I think too, Missouri might be one of the deepest teams in the country at receiver. Cook, this last game against Vanderbilt, completed a pass to 8 different wide receivers, which is pretty staggering. His main receiver, Luther Burden, the third LB3, is certainly he's making his own case for a wide receiver, the best wide receiver, at least probably top 5 in the country. He has 4 straight games of 100 plus yards. Very impressive there. Or 4 straight 100 plus receiving yards per game, I should say. But yeah, with this game though, Missouri, they have a chance to put kind of LSU in the coffin if LSU isn't already there. Their schedule after this is kind of a doozy a little bit. They go to Kentucky, they play Tennessee, they play Georgia, but I don't know, a win here, Missouri, it's at Missouri. I think it certainly puts them in talks of the SEC title for sure, or the championship game, I should say. But I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm really sold on Missouri being a real contender yet. I do agree they seem better and they've got a lot of good weapons, but not a super. I mean, they had a win over K-State. That was impressive, right? But outside of that, South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Memphis, Vanderbilt last week. I mean, they haven't exactly gone through the ringer. Now, like you said, I don't know what version of LSU shows up to play on Saturday. LSU's season kind of just ended, really. Or, they're not going to go to the playoff anymore. They're for sure a goner from the playoff. So what version of LSU walks into Columbia will be interesting. So Missouri will have that going for them, right? It's typically a pretty tough place to play. They're going to be fired up. Huge game for them. I mean, I think some people are getting a little carried away with this whole narrative of Missouri winning their half of the SEC. They've got, like you said, they've got a long ways to go. Even if they beat LSU, they got to go to Kentucky with the week after that. They still have a trip to Georgia. They got Tennessee left on the schedule. They got Florida left on the schedule. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, thus far, though, they've only played one SEC game against Vanderbilt, right? Yeah. So I could see Missouri winning the game. Like you said, I mean, they do have a lot of weapons. They're going to be super fired up. Well, again, I could see LSU kind of sleepwalking into that game, right? It's an early kick. LSU was undoubtedly dejected this week,
Right.
After that loss to Ole Miss last week. So I kind of like Missouri in the spot. Again, I don't think Missouri is like a real contender or anything like that. I think they'll, likely show up and get beat by Kentucky next week. And then even if LSU showed up and beat Missouri by a solid touchdown or two, it wouldn't be horribly surprising. But I'm just kind of counting on LSU being a little down on their luck, given the fact that they started this year, preseason top 6, 7, 8. I mean,
Yeah,
right there for a playoff contender, and it's week 6 and their season's basically done. That's not a thing anymore. So I'm kind of counting on LSU not playing a great game, Missouri being super fired up and getting the big win at home. But I don't think Missouri's going to go on win the SEC. I've seen some people saying that. They're good. There's no doubt about it. That win over K-State is impressive, though K-State's not ranked. Yeah, So I take him. I could see Missouri in the spot. I don't mind him here, but I think they still end up with at least 3 losses the rest of the way, if not 4 or 5.
Right, and that's a good point too with what kind of LSU walks into this game. You had the LSU a couple weeks ago play against Mississippi State where they just completely blew them out. Wasn't even a game. But since then, LSU has been very questionable, and I think that it's certainly not going to help that now they're essentially. I mean, I talked about earlier about putting the final coffin or putting the final nail in the coffin. Missouri could here, but honestly, it's probably already been done by Ole Miss last week.
Yeah.
So you got to wonder if Brian Kelly hasn't already started to lose the locker room a little bit with those guys, knowing that college football playoffs is off the table now, and kind of that's I'm sure that was their main goal for the season. So I don't know what kind of football teams walking in here, and I know for one thing LSU definitely has to improve their defense from last year getting 55 or last week getting 55 put up on them, just not acceptable. I know Alabama held that defense. I want to say held Ole Miss's offense to. I want to say it was 10 or 13.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see also what kind of game Jaden Daniels has. He had a outstanding game last week. I think he had 523 total yards. That's passing and rushing, but terrific game by him. But no, honestly, yeah, this line it was 6.5. I want to say yesterday, so it's moving down a little bit. I would like Missouri here on the money line, but that's my take. Another great game on noon or at noon. We have the Red River Shootout. We have Oklahoma versus Texas. This is definitely going to be great game. I'm probably going to say it now, probably the best game of the day. Kind of breaking it down here. We have first time. This is the first time both teams come in at 5-0 since 2008. I think one thing that's really fueling this game is Oklahoma's embarrassment from last year, getting beat 48-0. Yes, I think Texas is no doubt the most talented team, better up front, better at line of scrimmage, both sides. But I think you kind of know how these games work. I think Oklahoma is fully capable. It's not like they're way behind Texas talent-wise. Texas for sure has better guys, but I think Oklahoma's right up there with Texas. And I think this is going to be a game that's neck and neck. I personally, I think it's going to come down to a last-second field goal. It's just at the Cotton Bowl. What is it in Dallas, Texas, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Cotton Bowl. So for me, by far, this is the game of the week. It's hard for me to pick against Texas here just with how loaded they are with talent. But I just think Brent Venables is going to have his team just on payback mode. They're going to want revenge, getting embarrassed like they did last year, 48-0. I think that's definitely going to provide a lot of juice for the guys for this game.
Yeah, you sure think so. You think, I mean, all the good coaches or great coaches are able to use that type of stuff for fuel. So 49-0 last year. Now, worth noting, Oklahoma prior to that had won 4 in a row against Texas. So from 2018 through 2021, they beat Texas 4 straight times, and then Texas won big last year. So just worth noting. But one of the weird things last year, Dylan Gabriel was out of that game. Not that Dylan Gabriel's worth 49 points or, you know what I mean? It's not like if he would have played, I think they would have still won. I still think Texas would have won handedly, but I mean, it's just worth noting he didn't play last year. But yeah, I just think Texas is a lot better all around. Oh crap. I think my computer just keep going without me. If I get kicked, but it might kick me here.
Okay.
I'll log back in, but no, I like Texas here. I think they're better all around. I do think Oklahoma can play with Texas, and I think it probably will be a competitive game. But I think Texas this year is just better. I think Texas is a top-notch team, top to bottom. So, yeah, I think Oklahoma will have payback on their minds, and that will probably allow them to play closer with Texas than they otherwise might. But I like Texas here in this spot. I think there's just too much talent. I think Oklahoma's.
All right. Well, we will not know what was said there, but I don't know. To pick back up though, I was just gonna add on to what Michael was saying that Oklahoma's offense is number 3 in scoring at 47.4. Oklahoma's defense is also number 2 in limiting the score. It's holding defenses to 8.5. So kind of pretty legit on both sides of the ball. The one thing for Texas is that they're not a bad red zone offense, that's for sure, but also they're not a great red zone team in the sense, I guess, of capitalizing on a touchdown. So they've been in the red zone 21 times. They've only scored 11 touchdowns when they've been in the red zone 21 times. The other 8 have been field goals, and then what would that put us at? There's 2 where they must have went for it or turnovers or whatever. So don't always capitalize when they get in the red zone. Texas does, though, rank amongst the best in red zone defense. They're just second behind Michigan, actually. They will go against Oklahoma, who actually is one of the best red zone offenses. So a lot of red zone stats to throw at you there, but red zone should be very interesting. Taking a look at, here we got throwing Michael back in here. A lot of people though were hanging their hat on taking Texas this week because of who they played last year, how they beat Kansas pretty handedly, 40 to 14. However, I think that game's a little bit deceiving. A little bit. Jalen Daniels, Kansas's primary playmaker, did not play. So for what that's worth, I saw people kind of not bragging, but saying about how they dominated Kansas. They did, but Jalen Daniels QB1 is out, and he's by far the best player. So last week they held Kansas, who was number 1 in third down offense, to or they held them 0 for 8 for third down conversions. So for what that's worth, not too bad. But Texas did on offense, so they did showcase another one of their elements of their attack. Jonathan Brooks, he rushed for 218 yards. So, I mean, they already had their QB going for Quinn Ewers, showing he can be a dual threat with his legs, and then in the air too, as well, as we all know. We saw from the Alabama game. But then the receiving core, I mean, you got A.D. Mitchell, you got, I want to say, Xavier Worthy. Then you got the tight end, Jatavion Sanders, who the big number 0, he's probably right up there with Brock Bowers for one of the best tight ends in the nation. And then too, with Texas D-line also, probably right there with Ohio State and Michigan for top 3 D-lines in the nation. But you got guys like Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, who huge guys who just clog the middle, can rush the pass. And against Oklahoma's offensive line, who's kind of been a little bit unproven this year. So I'm probably staying away from this one, to be honest. 6.5. I don't know. I just, for some reason, I don't like it. But my best bet though is that this is a 3-point game. I'm probably not going to put any money on it, but I like one team beating the other in a field goal. I don't know if you had any lasting thoughts before you got cut off there.
No, I'd like Texas here. Even with the revenge factor, I just think Texas is better. So I take Texas.
So moving out west, we got number 13, Washington State. Actually a 3.5-point dog to UCLA, going on 3 p.m. Eastern. But Washington State by far has been easily my favorite team of the season. This season kind of has made me actually probably a little bit of a fan, so I'll try to remain a little unbiased here. But you got guys like Cam Ward who past 2 games his QBR has been 96.0, which is unheard of. Unheard of QBR. He is the most underrated player in college football. He's thrown 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I've seen people saying about how he's kind of like the dark horse Heisman runner. He's kind of like in the back. But I don't think there's anything dark horse about him. His numbers are insane. You watch the games; they speak for himself. He seems like he seems like a great guy in the interviews. He has 2 of the best wide receivers probably in college football, Kyle Williams and Josh Kelly. Now, I know there's a ton of good receivers, but I think that 1-2 punch is as good as any in the country. The thing that makes me nervous though for the Cougars here is that it is an away game and the passing game doesn't always travel well. They 2 things that do travel well, the run game and defense, 2 areas that have been a little bit of a weak spot for Washington State. Defensively, they're not great. They're 80th overall in total defense. So, I mean, they're not horrible, but they're not elite for sure. But total offense, I mean, they rank 5th in the country. They are the real deal offense. Still 3.5. I think Jake Dickert, he used that as motivation for his guys. They're ranked 13th, and they're still a 3.5 point dog. They're coming off a bye week. Honestly, I like the Cougars here, feeling rejuvenated off a bye week.
Yeah. UCLA's coming off a bye week too. Or both are coming off bye weeks technically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Washington State too. Not that these comparisons always work perfectly. And this isn't totally even, but like prior to their bye week, UCLA lost at Utah by 7. And then Utah turned around and got, whooped on pretty good by Oregon State last week. Just because Utah's offense is so limited. Meanwhile, Washington State beat Oregon State in a shootout, the week prior to that. So again, those are never perfect crossovers or anything like that. But I just like Washington State's resume a little more. They handled Colorado State and they beat Wisconsin, which I think that win's going to age really well. Northern Colorado doesn't really count, and then beat Oregon State, whereas UCLA, Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, NC Central, North Carolina. I don't even know who that is. So anyways, I like Washington State here. It's a good point about the passing game not always traveling that well, but I just think Washington State's got more weapons. UCLA home games are not really. Isn't UCLA kind of notorious for not really having very impressive home crowds? I mean, aren't they like the one that a lot of times you'll see on like Twitter, someone will post a picture of the crowd 10 minutes before kick, and it's like literally the stadium might be 20% full. Mm-hmm. So just point being, I don't know how crazy of an environment that'll really be. So I think I like Washington State here. Better resume, better wins, played better opponents. I know it's a road game, but I think this is another big win for Washington State. Really, Washington State's schedule is really not that bad when you go through it. Like, I mean, just so assume they beat UCLA, then they get to go home for Arizona, at Oregon. That's a huge one. But then home for Arizona State. Or I'm sorry, at Arizona State. Home for Stanford, at Cal, home for Colorado, at Washington. It's not really that bad of a schedule, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, there's no Utah in there. I feel like I'm missing someone else, but
do they play Colorado?
They already beat Oregon State. They do play Colorado. That's the second to last game of the year, but yeah. Anyways, just for this game, I like Washington State. I think they're pretty impressive, and I wouldn't be that scared of that environment at UCLA. It's not a weird kick time or anything like that. So I'm going to take Washington State. I'd take them on the money line too.
And a game you mentioned that we will not be breaking down this episode, Colorado takes on Arizona State, and Colorado comes in as a 4.5 point favorite. So interesting line there. I thought they would be favored by a little bit more. It is at Arizona State, but we'll have to say that for another time. We are not breaking down that game this episode. But moving on to Iowa City, to the Midwest, we got Purdue taking on Iowa. Iowa comes in 2.5 point favorite, 3:30 Eastern. I just don't really know what to think of this game. As everyone knows, the news has broke that Cade McNamara is out for the remainder of the season with the ACL injury. Deacon Hill is going to be filling in his shoes. Meanwhile, Purdue's coming off. They're probably their best win of the season. They beat Illinois 44-16, and thanks to a 21 point third quarter. Purdue, I mean, so let's look at it. They finally put it together here after some crazy sloppy play the first couple of games of the season. Boy, did they look bad. It was said that Ryan Walters has officially taken over defensive play calling. He did. His first game was against Illinois, and I mean, it kind of showed. And if you don't know who Ryan Walters is, he used to be the defense coordinator at Illinois last year when they had a really good defense, and he has taken over the reins for play calling defensively. So it showed last week, but I see people getting pretty high and mighty on Purdue, and again, I'm just so all over the place for this game. I can make arguments for both sides, but let's not put the wagon ahead of the horse here. Purdue, like I said, they look so sloppy in the past 3 or 4 games that they played. And actually, I'm going to go through. I have quite a few Iowa stats here, but here in a second, I'll go through them. But Iowa's actually one of the that's a huge strength for them. They're actually top 5 in penalties in the NCAA. In 5 games, they've only had 15 penalties, just losing them just around 100 yards, which is good enough for 5th in the nation. Whereas Purdue has had, in 5 games, they've had 32 penalties and they lost 300 yards thanks to those. So I don't know. When Purdue can play clean football, they are serviceable. They got Hudson Card back there at quarterback, who's a very good quarterback, kind of a little bit of a dual threat, to be honest, with his legs, with his arm. So yeah, I mean, because I really kind of want to dig into Iowa here in a second, but what do you have for this game?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one to get a read on. Just because Purdue's been inconsistent, kind of difficult to read team all year. And then Iowa's in a odd predicament because they just lost McNamara. Now they got to go with Deacon Hill as their quarterback the rest of the way. But I don't know how much that really impacts Iowa in this weird way, just because Iowa's system, like Cade McNamara wasn't really doing that much for Iowa. Like, truth be told, his stats weren't very impressive. Iowa's offense, the numbers are still terrible. So I don't know. Like, I'm not really convinced that makes that big of a difference for Iowa and what they want to do. Like, they're not going to look for Deacon Hill to do much, right? It's going to be the same old Iowa football, play action, dump downs to the tight end where he has to throw the ball a total of like 5 yards. They'll hand the ball off. They beat Purdue big last year, if you remember. Caleb Johnson, their running back, Iowa's running back, who I believe was a true freshman last year, had a huge game. I don't remember how many yards he rushed for. I want to say it was north of 200. I mean, just like a massive game. Now, he's been hurt for most of the season. I don't know if he's back this week or not. But Iowa ran the ball really effectively against Purdue last year. So kind of a tough game to get a read on, just because, like I said, you go through Purdue this season, they lose to Fresno State, beat Virginia Tech, lose to Syracuse, lose to Wisconsin, and then they, beat Illinois by 25 last week. So I don't know. They're a really tough team to get a read on. And then Iowa's obviously got their issues, but I think I mean, I don't know. I guess I was just gonna say at Kinnick, you like the Hawks, but to be fair, last time Purdue traveled to Iowa City, they beat them 24-7. Just throw
Mhm.
that out there. And that was 2021. That was, I think that was coming off of Iowa beat Penn State that year. You remember that really big game? Iowa was like highly ranked, really highly
Mhm.
ranked in 2021. I don't remember. I want to say they were like top 5 maybe when Purdue went into Iowa City and beat them handily 24-7. So kind of weird the last 2 years. Purdue handles Iowa at Iowa, then Iowa turns around and handles Purdue at Purdue. They've actually the last 4 meetings they've split 2-2. So this line's probably about right. I mean, you probably do in the end just kind of slightly favor the home team. And I would probably say Iowa figures it out just because I think Purdue's in a weird spot with a new coach and all that going on this year. I don't really trust them. I know Iowa's football is ugly, but I think I would just trust kind of the ugly system to get it done. Play good defense, win special teams, and you know the offense will figure out enough to get 7 to 10 points on the board, maybe more than that.
Mhm.
And Iowa wins ugly. That'd be my take.
I did forget to mention in the beginning that Iowa versus Purdue in the past, what you basically broke that down, but in the past 6 years, Iowa is 2-4 versus Purdue. They're actually 40-50 all time. Uh, a whole bunch of those losses for Iowa came in a span of 1961 to 1980, where literally Iowa lost 20 years in a row. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they got their butt whooped for 20 years straight. But no, to add to what you're saying with the Deacon Hill situation, literally the bar can't get lower for him. Iowa's coming off, or Iowa, according to week 5 stats here, going into week 6, Iowa's literally last in total offensive ranking. They're 130th out of 130th. I know there's 133 teams, so I don't know. I think there must be some ties at some positions, but I know Iowa has 130th to themselves. Um, they're averaging a scant 4.3 yards per play, which is also worse than the nation. A reference for this: Indiana is averaging, I want to say, like 5.1 yards per game or per play. Third down conversion percentage is just ahead of Louisiana Monroe, Charlotte, and FIU. They rank 127th out of 130th. First downs, they're only ahead of Louisiana Monroe and Navy at 65 first downs in 5 games. People say all the time how bad Nebraska's offense is, and for sure, Nebraska has their troubles on offense. But a little reference: Nebraska has 86 first downs compared to Iowa at 65, just to show the lack of ball movement there. Um, One place where you can't take the or kind of diss the Hawks, it's a red zone offense. That's the one area that's actually been great for the Hawkeyes. They're ranked 20th. They have 15 red zone attempts. Of those attempts, 5 have been rushing touchdowns, and 3 have, so 5 have been rushing touchdowns, 3 have been passing touchdowns, and then 6 have been field goals. So pretty good percentage there when they get into the red zone, if they can get there. But again, kind of my end of my rant here, but 125 yards passing a game, which is only actually 20 yards ahead of how they were doing last season with Spencer Petras, and everybody harped how Spencer Petras was the worst quarterback ever, and we're only 20 yard or the Hawks are only 20 yards ahead of him. So Deacon Hill, I mean, for the position he's in right now, the bar literally can't get lower. I mean, they're literally worst in college football. So I mean, it can really only go up from here. He's a lot more wilder than McNamara. He seems like he takes some chances on some throws, and honestly, it's not completely fair to be too critical on McNamara because he is dealing with injury, and I know that's affecting his play probably more than he comes out and says, to be honest. And it's not like McNamara isn't a proven quarterback. He's shown that he can produce at different schools. So you definitely got to blame the coaching here. But But if you watch last week's game with Deacon Hill, he kind of came in throwing the ball super hard, probably a little nervous. Receivers could not catch. I think they dropped six catches, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, can't blame. Yeah, you can blame the receivers, but maybe give them a little wiggle room. They really haven't seen the ball all year, so when you start getting the ball thrown at you, it is kind of like, oh, so, so there's that. But my last thing though, something everybody says that I don't think it holds weight for this year. Everybody always talks about how elite Iowa's offense is. Really, this year it has not.
Defense.
Or yeah, defense. Thanks for the correction. Their defense is you can't get that confused. Their defense really has not been elite. It's been good. Elite though, it has not been elite. They're ranked 33rd in the nation for total defense. Yes, Penn State game probably hurt them a lot, but still 33rd. They're tied with Indiana and some other schools for first downs given up. They rank 64th in that statistic. One of the worst statistics, maybe offensively and defensively. Another play, Iowa just loves the bottom this year. Iowa comes in 130th for this defensive stat. Can you guess what it is?
Defensive stat?
Yeah, this defensive stat. They're ranked worst in the nation.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Sacks. They have 3 sacks all year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's easy to believe. They never get pressure.
They have 4. They average 4.8 tackles for loss per game, which is 102nd in the nation. So, yeah, I really don't think you can even hang your hat anymore on the Iowa defense. They used to always be able to say, "Well, yeah, offense sucks, but defense always bails us out." I don't really think that's the case. I think special teams are still very. I think you can make the argument special teams are elite still this year. Defense, though, I think you got a few elite players. You got Cooper DeJean. You got guys like Deontay Craig on the line, but I think this is not an average defense. I think this is still a good defense, but not the defense we saw last year. So I don't know. And I make all these criticisms too. And Iowa is still 5-1, or no, not 5-1. They're 4-1. So I mean, I guess it is contradictory. Like they are still winning, but and going on from this point too, they could still win. They could finish 10-2, honestly, and they'd have to be one of the worst 10-2 teams in the history of college football if that happens. But yeah, I don't know. It's quite the predicament going on in Iowa City. So this game, though, to digress here, I'm taking Purdue. So moving on here. We got number 20 Kentucky at number 1 Georgia. Georgia is a 14.5 point favorite. Georgia coming off a pretty rough game last week against Auburn at Auburn. Probably this is probably one of the games I have one of the least amount of information for, but I know their running back, Kentucky's running back, had some absurd number of yards. I think it was around 250 yards rushing. I want to say, is that right?
Ray Davis? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Just absurd. Maybe it was in 240. So absurd rushing game. The thing that scares me for Kentucky is their passing game. I think Leary, Devin Leary, did he go to NFL already? I don't know. The name is escaping me, but I know he had like 80 yards passing, 80 or 90 yards passing in that game. So I don't know if they really have much of a passing game. I think they have a really good defense too. Their defense is elite. I want to say they have 3 defensive touchdowns this year. But offensively, it's really looking one-dimensional. They have that run attack, which they're going to punch you in the mouth. But against Georgia, I think you got to have more than that. But you saw last week, Auburn, like what we talked about in the last video, coming in last in total offensive ranking in Power 5 football. And I mean, it's still a ball game. So I don't know with this one, 14.5. I really don't know with this one.
Yeah, Georgia hasn't looked all too impressive this year. Obviously, if you've been following their games, but I don't know. You like at the same time, then you go through like the stats, top offensive and defensive stats, and they're still ranked pretty highly amongst offensive and defensive team leaders. As far as like yards gained per game, yards given up per game, things like that. So I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see Kentucky win personally. I think it'd be fun to see Kentucky come into Georgia and win that game. It'd be huge, but I don't really trust them. I'd have to ride with Georgia here. They're just better, more proven at Georgia. Night game, that environment's going to be absolutely bonkers. Carson Beck has really played pretty well this year. So I don't think this is Georgia of old, but I don't know. To me, it's tough. Like for me to be able to trust Kentucky in this spot, I have to be able to see him do it. I can't really bet against Georgia here. I think under the lights in a game like this, I get the concerns with Georgia, and I think those will eventually catch up with them this season, but I don't think it's here. Not against this Kentucky team. I think Georgia shuts down the run game for Kentucky. Kentucky gets super one-dimensional on offense, and Georgia kind of runs away with it. So I like Georgia here at home.
Yeah, no doubt. Our last game of the slate, though, we have number 10 Notre Dame taking on number 25 Louisville at Louisville. Night game, 6:30. Notre Dame's third straight game playing, or I guess in South Bend they played at home, but last week, as you know, they played away, pretty hostile, for as hostile as Duke gets, but pretty crazy environment. And then I'm sure at Louisville it's going to be a crazy environment. They are 5-0. They're going to be wanting this. They're going to be wanting this win bad. I think Notre Dame's secondary is going to be tested for sure. I think Jack Plummer is a capable quarterback. He struggled against NC State last week. Very low scoring game. It was 13-10, I want to say. But Jack Plummer, he definitely struggled last week. But Notre Dame, keep mixing the teams. NC State, they're good they have a pretty elite secondary. So we'll see. But I don't know. I look for this game to be close early. I think Louisville comes out emotional. They're at home. I think they put up a fight first quarter, but look for Notre Dame to pull away second half in this game. I think for some reason I did not get the line. I want to say though the line is 6.5. Yes, it is 6.5. But I think Notre Dame covers this line pretty easily. I think Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish are on a mission to get back to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think I kind of like same idea. I just think Notre Dame's too good. And I think with their win over Duke. Now, one thing you could get Notre Dame on is next week they could have a look ahead spot. Next week they have a night game against USC, which is again going to be a massive game. So it kind of feels like they're just jumping big game to big game to big game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of like Notre Dame here. I think that last second win from behind against Duke last week, technically they led and then had to come from behind at the very end. But I think it kind of rallies them. Or you know what I mean? That's a feel good win.
Yeah, that gives them a lot of confidence.
Yeah, on the road, it keeps spirits high at practice this week. So Louisville will come out and give them their best shot, and Louisville's got some talent, but and it's a night game, so I think Louisville will come out ready to go. But yeah, I just think Notre Dame wears them down as this one goes on. I just think there's too much talent on the Notre Dame sideline. There's disappointing loss to Ohio State, but they have a lot to rally around. With that come from behind win last week against Duke. So, yeah, I like Notre Dame here. I think they get through it. I think it could be kind of ugly. or it could be relatively close till a little later. Though Notre Dame's a relatively quick starting team, or it seems like they have been outside of obviously that Ohio State game was 0-0 at half, but anyways, it just wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, if Louisville comes out, like I said, super fired up, super emotional, but that type of stuff tends to wear off as the game goes on, and I think Notre Dame's too talented. So I think Notre Dame gets through this one and sets up a big one with USC next week at home.
Yeah, no doubt. And is that a night game?
Yeah, 6:30.
Jeez. Yeah, that's gonna be a huge game. That's gonna be a fun one to break down. But so that does it for our slate for this video for 7 games. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. Make sure if you haven't already, please subscribe. And we will see you in next week's video.